Let's also talk about Banyas. Banyas is this other place, right? You look at Syria, it's kind of an oblong rectangle. It's a rectangle, a quadrilateral lying on its side, and there's a kind of a triangle with the point over on the left side, or it's a right triangle with the point over on the left side of the triangle. And you got to realize where the triangle is, there's no seacoast, because that's where we have Lebanon. And north of that, there is a coast on the Mediterranean, and that's where you have Tartus and Latakia and a couple of other cities. So here we are in Banyas on Wednesday talking to people about a massacre that had occurred there in mid-April. And what the story was, this is the massacre at the Banyas Bridge, right? It's like, the bridge over various rivers in the Balkans. This is a group of about 105 soldiers of the Syrian army. They're not combat troops, they're logistical troops, with an officer or two, who are attacked by a group of shooters, of terrorists. 200 to 300 of these terrorists show up, and they start shooting. The soldiers are taken by surprise, and so far from being on some kind of an aggressive mission, are they, that they basically, a lot of them run away. There's 70 of them just hightail it out of there. 40 of the soldiers stay and, they just stay. They don't shoot, but because they've been ordered not to shoot by Assad. And 9 of them are killed in the process. And I talked to one guy who had lost both of his legs in the process. I think people have been pretty terribly wounded. In this case, it's a group of soldiers who are moving out in some vehicles, and they're trying to get to a point where the terrorists have put trucks on the superhighway. Right, there's a bunch of 4-lane highways here in Syria across the border. So this has been blocked by some trucks, and the shooters were therefore waiting in an ambush for the soldiers to come out of their base in their vehicles with the idea that they were going to go and try to clear the roads and open this up again. So it's a little bit north of Tartus. It's the river sort of at the northern edge of town, right by a mosque. So they say that there was pretty much unanimity among the people reporting that the minaret, right, the muezzin of the minaret, or the imam, or something like this, on Friday in the middle of April, had put out, instead of the usual call to prayer, they had gone into a special emergency mode from 3 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon and put out a call to kill various people. And they were this sort of conflicting accounts from the different eyewitnesses about this. And the imam of that mosque fled for at least a while. It's interesting that there was practically no riposte by the Syrian army. If you shoot up a U.S. military unit, they're going to come after you and try to wipe you out. I think that's true of many armies. But in the case of Syria, it's a restraint that in the eyes of many goes too far. Certainly, the people there in Banyas were telling us that it's too restrained, that they want a firmer line and a crackdown. So that's our second case. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Well, we're doing the best we can here from Beirut with a special report, a program devoted entirely to the Syrian crisis. So we were just going through the Banyas massacre. We did an in-depth study. We probably had a dozen eyewitnesses, people who told different versions of what had happened, what they had saw and seen, and what parts of it they had actually lived through. The thing, therefore, is you got 100 plus troops of the Syrian army plus an officer attacked by 200 to 300 shooters. 40 of them stay but don't really reply to the fire. 9 of them get killed. Again, it's because of an order not to do it, right? Supposedly to spare civilian lives. And we talked to people about what was behind all this. One guy said that the muezzin who called for the attack, this constant call to violence between 3 and 6. So this is obviously, it's a renegade mosque. It's the kind of thing we saw in Operation Siren, right? Operation Mermaid in Libya, where the call went out from certain mosques to overthrow Gaddafi. In this case, one of the eyewitnesses, one of the most capable of the eyewitnesses, said he thought that the muezzin who called for the attack had been inspired by Qaddam. And Qaddam, as we mentioned before, Qaddam is the former foreign minister of Libya, and he is now being groomed by the NATO gang, the United States, Britain, and so forth, and the Israelis. He's being groomed as the new dictator of Libya. And of course, he's almost 80 years old. He's a former wheel horse of the regime under Hafez Assad. This is somebody who served, I think, 15, 20 years as foreign minister. It seemed like he was there forever. And now he's going to become the face of hope and change. And the idea is that people on the ground realize that what is happening, that it's not a matter of any spontaneous democracy demonstrations. It's just not there. That's not a demand. But rather, it's something being orchestrated. So orchestrated by Qaddam from Paris. It was interesting that I had seen an interview with Qaddam in Le Monde, the French newspaper, on the way over. When you stop in Paris and you pick up the press and look through, and here's an interview with Qaddam telling about how he's going to take over Syria. The quote from Qaddam is that he says he's going to ride back into Syria on a U.S. tank. How about that? So every Freemasonic monster in the world, and you look at his face, and he's sort of got P2 Lodge written all over his face, or something like this. He thinks the U.S. is going to shed blood and money to put him back in power. Well, that's up to the rest of us whether that's actually going to happen. And then let me say a few words about a very moving visit to the Baghdad military hospital. And this was also not a common event. I think we probably were the first journalists to get into this military hospital. And so let me just go through some of these notes that I have about it. One guy was Syrian army. He had been wounded in his stomach, and the bullet had gone across his body from one side of his stomach to the other, in on one side, out on the other. And he showed us his scars. He was doing security duty in Damascus at 4 o'clock in the morning, and snipers came on the scene and started shooting, except this is maybe not, sniper is not exactly the right word. This was a shooting at extremely close range, and there was somebody walking by, he said, about 1.5 meters away, so 4.5 feet, shot him. The soldiers that were there that Saturday morning at 4 a.m. were completely surprised by this sneak attack. The soldiers had guns, but the guns were not loaded, and therefore they weren't able to fight back either. So the guy says, we think those attackers were cowards because they wore these hoods. Now, this is a very interesting thing, because a lot of this is going on in French, right, for the various translations. But the cagoule is a hood. A cagoule is a hood. And cagoule is also, in the 1930s, there were hooded people, cagoulards, who were the French fascists. So maybe we can call this the Cagoulard Revolution, or the Cagoulard destabilization of Syria. So here are guys in black hoods with black clothing that kill soldiers at a security checkpoint at 4 o'clock in the morning, and their goal was to kill. So at this checkpoint where the guy was, there were 6 soldiers at his checkpoint. 2 were killed, 1 was wounded. He was the one who survived. The other 3 who were inside a sort of little blockhouse that they had, they survived okay. The shooters, the terrorists, were 6 to 7 people.